Hello guys, this is Gaurav Goyal, Northeast DeKalb Master Agronomist again. Today I'm with John Winchell, who is All-Tech Territory Sales Representative in Northeast. And he has been with us selling DeKalb in the past. He has an extensive background in forage management, so has done a lot of work in forage management. So I want to pick his brain today on mycotoxins. So John, tell our people, in your own words, what are mycotoxins, how are they produced, and what situations may lead to more mycotoxins?
First off, I guess I would say that I love mycotoxins. The confusion that a lot of producers have is you can talk about mold and mycotoxins and they just roll them into the same barrel. So the biggest thing between how I differentiate molds and mycotoxins, because it's kind of a chewy subject, the best thing that I give is the analogy of a skunk.
Okay.
I will give the skunk as a mold,
okay,
and the spray is a mycotoxin. So if we were to walk out of this building today and see a skunk, it doesn't necessarily mean he's going to spray you. But if you chase him with a stick or do something, he's going to spray you.
Yep.
And what you're doing is you're stressing that skunk, and he's creating a secondary metabolite or a defense mechanism in that spray. If you stress a mold to outcompete and as a defense mechanism, they're going to release this mycotoxin. So the true definition of a mycotoxin is a secondary metabolite, but basically it's just its defense mechanism that kind of releases that.
So that's a great analogy. What molds people really need to be thinking about as far as the mycotoxins are concerned?
It depends on where you're at and your geography. If you're looking at the Northeast, which I'll call Mycotoxin Alley because we have the right climate, humidity, temperature, swings in temperature and tight windows between harvest and planting, where I call it Mycotoxin Alley because we have that perfect scenario. So around here in the Northeast, you're looking at the fusarium types of mycotoxins, whether it's DON, T2, zearalenone, some fumonisant, some fusaric acid. Those are the main ones. Penicilliums are another mold that you run into a lot here in the Northeast.
So John, this year has been really dry, 2020. We know that pretty much entire Northeast has been dry to different extent. So do you expect less mycotoxin this year?
It's the $100,000, $1 million question actually when you look at this season, because this season has been very uncharacteristic in the Northeast. We've had high growing degree days, a lot of droughty weather, so it's been different. It's been a drier climate, and the fusariums like the vomitoxin, the T2, zearalenone normally prefer a wet, cold climate. Where this season, we've actually almost had Florida weather in the Northeast.
Yep.
So I'm starting to see some more aflatoxin issues than I would normally see up here. So yeah, it is a different type of year. I'm still seeing some vomitoxin and some issues. I'm more concerned now, the early corn that was brought in the Northeast has been really low in vomitoxin and our normal fusarium levels, but I'm seeing a lot of this frosted corn silage further into the Northeast that really was hammered on those 3 nights that were below 30 degrees. And I'm seeing really large numbers on the corn that was made post-frost this year, which I think it depends on what side of the fence you're going to be on this year. If you made it early, your levels are going to be low. If it got hammered and frosted really hard, I think your levels might be pretty high.
So what you're saying, John, is that we are seeing some mycotoxins, especially after the frosted corn.
Yep.
But then more about the aflatoxins that we are seeing more than ever because of how dry and how hard it has been as far as the GDU. So let me ask you, or switch gears a little bit on the hybrids, because some people think that certain hybrids tend to have more mycotoxins than others. What's your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a great topic because I think every seed company, you are going to have what I will call offensive and defensive varieties.
Yep.
You're going to have these racehorse varieties that really stretch their legs and really, really grow in great situations, but when you give them a little bit of stress, they don't handle that stress quite as well, and they're going to be more susceptible to mycotoxins, where you could have these traditional defensive varieties that really can handle that stress and have real high stress traits.
Yep.
And what I see more often than not in the field is when a lot of people buy their seed, they don't look at those stress traits or those stress levels of how that variety can handle stress.
Yep.
So that if you have real blighty ground, you don't want to put your racehorse varieties on that blighty ground. Sure. And I see oftentimes that people try to put the wrong type of corn in the wrong type of situation, and they set that plant up for, more stress level.
But let's say the weather changes, weather becomes really good for diseases, and when the guy has planted racehorse variety, you think a fungicide would help him manage mycotoxins then?
Yeah, I would say that's one of the biggest questions that I'm asked. Since I don't sell fungicide, people want to know if they should utilize that money for fungicides. And I think on these racehorse varieties, that if you apply them at the correct time, and that's one of the most important parts of fungicide, applying them at the correct time. Don't apply them too early, don't apply them too late. Like on the mycotoxin side, if you apply them between fresh green silk and when the silk starts to turn red, then you will have a definite reduction in your mycotoxin risks, because that fungicide will definitely reduce the stress in that plant. So it'll help these racehorse varieties do a better job to kind of push their way through.
So John, let's say if someone is worried about mycotoxins in their corn and they want to test it, how do they go about it?
Really, it's a pretty simple process. I mean, you can go locally and go to your local feed mill. You can go talk to your local agronomist. You can go to the local university. The major thing you want to make sure of is you're looking at a nice comprehensive test. Okay. There's a lot of tests out there anymore that are quick tests that you'll get the answer right away, but sometimes they're not going to be as accurate as these big comprehensive tests. They take a little longer to get, but they give you a better answer. Okay.
And when should people be testing their corn for mycotoxins? Is it just a few weeks before harvesting, or a week before testing, or is there a time frame people should be thinking about?
Really, that's a good question. I think timing is very critical. Right now, I'm really testing a lot for mycotoxins. I have a Neogen Raptor that I actually am taking on farm, and in 3 minutes, I can get a vomitoxin result on farm. I think it's important that as we're seeing corn dry down, and it's different moistures in different areas, that we get a test as soon as we can so we can know what our levels are, if we need to segregate or move feed around depending on the mycotoxin levels. With corn silage, I always take samples, sometimes pre-harvest, but a lot of times right when the silage is being made, I go in and take a sample of it. A lot of people think that maybe the mycotoxins will increase while they're ensiled or decrease, and really most mycotoxins are field-borne. They come into the bunker or the silo, and those numbers are going to be pretty stable where they're at. They're typically not going to increase, at least on the fusarium types. So.
What about grain? What time should they be testing mycotoxins right at black layer, or they should let it dry and then test mycotoxins? Or
normally, I would say that for us, looking at testing it, you want to be about that 12 or 15 to 20% is when you want to test for those mycotoxins. They're typically, the biggest issue that I see on farm is we're not quite dry enough. We're sitting and teetering in that 20%, and we want to let it dry down a little more in the field. But what happens is with the way the GDUs are, and at the end of the season, it doesn't dry down nearly as much. So we wait longer and longer, and the mycotoxin levels get higher and higher and higher. Yeah.
So you recommended fungicide and the changing the variety. Is there anything else people should be thinking about when they want to manage mycotoxins, say for next year?
Yeah, I mean, some of the obvious things that you would look at is crop rotation. I mean, rotating your crop is definitely going to reduce that mycotoxin footprint. Okay. But in the area that we live in, new land isn't coming every day. So what we have is continual corn on corn on corn. If you can rotate, that's probably one of the best things that you can possibly do. also taking care of the plant like it needs to be. Making sure your planting populations are where they should be. If you have more of a flexi variety, for instance, then you don't want to crowd it. I mean, look at the environment we're in with COVID right now. We don't want to be in large groups of people. Plants are the same way. If you crowd them, they're going to be more apt to be stressed. So opening up that population, allowing that plant to have the population it's supposed to, and then taking care of the plant like you should, making sure you're scouting it and you're monitoring it to make sure that you see these stress issues in field. That's what we're going to do to fix that. And then the biggest thing that I would say on a corn silage front would be make sure we're harvesting our corn at the correct dry matter. Yep. I always shoot for 34 to 36 dry matter, whole plant dry matter, and I do a lot of chipping to make sure people hit that window, because not only does it ferment well, it packs well, and you reduce mycotoxin levels. Because if you get over 36 to 38 to 40% dry matter, all of a sudden you get mycotoxin issues.
Well, I want to thank John for providing a lot of good information on mycotoxins today, and hopefully you guys learned a lot about mycotoxins so that you can plan for a good crop, not only this year but even in the future ahead. So with that, I want to leave you at that, but thank you for watching. This is God of Goel again.